right, guys. Good morning. Before we get started here, I just want to introduce myself. You guys can see my screen over there that I'm sharing with you. My name is Tyler Sheff. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the host of the Cashflow Guys podcast. And as you can see here on this slide, we're available on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Periscope, except for this morning, I'm having some technological issues. What I'm going to show you guys this morning is a portion of a slideshow that I did this week over at one of our local RIAs, Tampa Bay RIA. And I want to hit on a couple points that I know some people wanted some review on. What we find a lot right now in the marketplace is people are grossly overpaying for property. This is a problem. This is a major problem because they don't understand how to analyze a deal, or worse, they're relying on a real estate agent. In a lot of cases, real estate agents are not trained to analyze deals. First of all, you got to know that. The only way they know that information is if they are trained as an investor. Now, some brokers seem to think that they took a little bit of training on NOI when they got their broker's license, and that qualifies them to teach investing. Now, my broker is an investor, so he's well qualified. He's an expert at what he does. He's actually owned rental property, so I'm okay with him going through it. But generally speaking, most agents are not savvy on matters of investing. Now, I believe a good agent, a proactive agent, needs to get off the couch and get into some sort of formal education that's tied specifically to real estate investing before they A, take a rental property as a listing, or B, represent somebody in buying a rental property. They need to have that training. So what I'm going to give you guys today is a quick test method that I use in the field to analyze a deal real quick. So when I'm driving by, if I know either the price or the rent, I can tell if it's somewhere in the ballpark. Now, guys, you're not going to find good deals with a big red flags and red, white, and blue flags hanging off them and waving, going, here, buy me, buy me. No. When people put their property on the market, they're always asking top dollar. I don't care if they're a wholesaler, a realtor, or a private seller. So you getting discouraged because you can't find a great deal tells me that you're not looking at all. Because if you were looking and talking to sellers, and more importantly, negotiating, you would discover that the great deals are right in front of your face. You just don't know how to quickly analyze them and then therefore go into the steps to negotiate to take things to the next level and to get them under contract based on numbers that make sense. When I sell a property, I will a lot of times intentionally underprice it because I know that people are greedy. And if they think there's a deal, they'll freak out, and I'll get 15 people writing offers on the same property. Yeah, I intentionally do that, and I'm proud to say it. And I've had other real estate agents try to make a big stink about that, saying that's unethical. No, it's not unethical. I have an obligation to my seller to follow their instruction. And if the seller wants top dollar for their property, hey, that's how we're going to go. I didn't force your buyer to buy. They did it all on their own. I digress. Talking about analyzing the deal, the big question I get a lot is how do we analyze a property quickly to see what it's worth before we stop to take another look? Because, you're driving around, you're seeing all these houses that are tore up, different states of ugly and nasty, and you're trying to figure out what makes sense, what doesn't. The formula I use is called a hurdle rate, or I call it the 1.5 method. Now, the hurdle rate basically is a number, a percentage, that when either multiplied or divided into another number gives you the ratio between itself and that number as far as the purchase price or rent. So let me break it down. You take your gross rent. So you looking at a single family house and it's renting for $750 a month. That's what they tell you. At $750 a month rent, divide that by 1.5%. Guys, don't forget to hit the percent key. And if your calculator doesn't have a percent key, do the decimal version. Market rent divided by 1.5%. That will give you the maximum you should be willing to pay for that property. That includes closing costs, repairs, everything. Now, a lot of people go, $50,000. No, man, the guy down the street's got one for $90,000 that rents for $750, and he said it's a great deal. Well, that guy is the guy probably selling the property, first of all. And if he's the guy that owns the property and just bought it, he's not too swift. Because if that was the case, if you paid $90,000 for a property that rents for $750, you're losing money every month, especially if you got debt service. If you pay cash, your cash on cash return on that would be ridiculous. Ridiculous. It wouldn't even be worth spending the money. And the whole idea behind, if you're a guy that is smart enough to figure out a way to amass $90,000, then you shouldn't be dumb enough to go pay $90,000 for a house that rents for $750. A lot of people will say, well, the reason why I did it is because when I do XYZ to it, it'll be worth this. Well, I understand that. However, why would you reward the seller by overpaying them now for the performance that a property will do some point down the road? If it's performing at $1,500 a month, then give the guy $100,000. You'll never hear me complain. But if you're giving the guy $150,000 for a property that rents for $750, we got a problem, a big one. Unless the terms are so favorable, it will make that happen. My example is this: guy wants $150,000 for his house. That's fine. I can do $150,000 a house. Here's what it's going to look like. For $150,000, I can give you $150 a month until paid. And he's going to say, well, some people, and I've bought quite a few properties that way. They're so fixated on the fact that they must get $150,000. They don't care that it comes in $150 a month increments, because they think they're getting over because they sold it, quote unquote, for $150,000. Now, understand, if I took that deal, I'm going to be owning that property for a long time. The good news is, notice how I set it, $150 a month until paid. That's basically, you take the purchase price, $150,000, and you divide that by $150. Let's do the math right now. That's 1,000 months. I better have some descendants. That's for sure. Because that's like, I don't know, 120 years. You can also use this as a means to, and this is just a quick example. I'm not suggesting I would ever take on a property and sign a note for 1,000 months. Because I believe if that got challenged in court, I probably wouldn't win. The seller could be a victim. My point is, the payments have to be able to be afforded by the asset. It's not the landlord's job to make the payments on a rental property. It's the tenant's job to make the payments. And if the rent isn't high enough to do that, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So don't make that mistake. Now, it's kind of a little joke I said here. If you're okay with losing a bunch of money every month, you can go ahead and deviate from this. You can even take it down to 1.25 or 1% in your calculations. After all, as long as you get the deal, that's all that really matters anyway, right? I'm saying that being facetious. I have a guy that comes to my events that keeps spitting out 1%. Oh, I was told 1%. Well, whoever told you that needs counseling. At 1%, you're going to lose money. You're going to lose money every single month. You're probably going to wind up in foreclosure. So I would not recommend going the 1% route. But what do I know? Many people tell me that the 1.5% rule does not work. It doesn't work in New York. It doesn't work in Seattle. It doesn't work in Arizona. This is what I hear all the time. Well, guys, I'm here to tell you, it does work. But here's a couple of reasons why you're saying it doesn't work. For starters, you're probably buying off the shelf. If you're running down the Zillow ads looking for a property that's going to fit into this criteria, you're probably not going to find any. Another reason why it won't work is they're not good at negotiating. You haven't even picked up the phone to call the seller. Going back to what I said earlier, people are not going to ask what they really want for a property. They're going to test the market. The real estate agents, I've heard real estate agents that come in and the seller says, I want $50,000. Next thing you know, it's on the market for $75,000. And then it sits there for 6 months and nobody buys it. because the agents are so caught up in trying to impress the seller to get a deal, they get themselves in trouble. All right, let's see here. Paul, no, it's rent divided by 1.5%, or in your case, 0.015. Rent divided by 0.015. Now, Paul, if you don't know the rent amount, let me go back to that slide and explain that real quick. If you don't know the amount of the rent, but you do know the purchase price, you would do it in reverse. That's where the multiplication comes in. At that point, you would take the purchase price times 1.5%. If you do the purchase price times 1.5%, it will give you what the market rent should be, what you should be able to rent it for, the minimum number. So if you take $50,000 and you multiply $50,000 by 1.5%, let's do the math right now together. 50,000 times 1.5% equals $750 a month. That means that property needs to be able to rent for at least $750 a month for $50,000 to be a good number. Let's assume the seller says, I need 60,000. Okay, Mr. Seller, let me figure that out. 60,000 times 1.5% equals 900. Mr. Seller, I can't get 900 rent. You just told me the most this thing will rent for is 750. So how can I pay you 60 knowing that it won't rent for 900? I want to be fair with you, but I need you to be fair with me. What about 24 unit each rent for $1,000? $24,000. So 24,000 divided by 1.5%. That means the most you should ever pay for that property is $1.6 million. Tyrone, rentometer or rentometer, depending on who you're asking. Nothing wrong with it. But here's the thing you got to understand. Rentometer is advertised prices. Advertised prices. It does not mean what they actually rented for. The best way to find out what a property should rent for is to call property management companies, a couple of them, and here's why. Property managers are usually realtors. Property managers are intentionally keep the rents realistic because they want to keep their job easy. So if you're looking for a conservative rent amount when you're negotiating, you call a couple property management companies and you ask them for market rent. Because I'm here to tell you, if market rent is really $750, these jokers will tell you $650 because they don't want to work so hard to rent it. They know that if they put it out on the market for $650, people are going to jump all over it. Any questions at this point before I go on to the next slide? Here's a big reason. One of the reasons, if you look over here, why people can't get the 1.5 to work is they're guessing at the rent amount. A lot of people don't understand that. They actually have to do some work here. Real estate doesn't just come land in your lap. You got to pick up the phone and do some work and bust your butt a little bit. So you can't be guessing at your numbers. If you don't know the answer to the question, you have to ask somebody. Every single day, there's something I come across that I have no idea. And I got to find the person that can give me the answer. That's how I built the portfolio that I have now. Last reason is they try on one or two properties and give up. People that can't get this to work, they're sitting in New York City or something like that, and they're going to go run it on Trump Tower and figure out the Trump Tower, those numbers don't work. Oh, geez, I was looking at a 3-bedroom flat in Greenwich Village, and I can't get the 1.5 to work. There's no way that'll make sense. Now, people in cities like New York, especially like in Manhattan and places like that, you're going to find that people there, they're not buying for cash flow. They're buying for appreciation. The 1.5 rule is designed for those who are buying for cash flow. So if you're not buying for cash flow, simply don't use this as a metric. If you're buying based on speculation, you're hoping that the market will go up and the value will increase, then don't use this. But if you're buying as a long-term hold for cash flow, then absolutely use this because this will keep you out of trouble. And yes, it will not work off the shelf. I guarantee you that. You're going to have to pick up the phone and negotiate. And if you actually underwrite a deal, any deal with all the expenses, I guarantee you the deal will cash flow appropriately unless your criteria is so off the charts. I'm pretty conservative. I'm sure there's people that are more conservative than me. But if you run this consistently, you will probably find that you will do far better getting properties under contract. That makes sense. Wholesalers, you're out looking for properties for landlords, and you use this as a metric. And I understand that half the time you talk to the landlords that work with wholesalers, and you ask them, what type of criteria you're looking for, where do you need to be, and they'll tell you, I'm looking for great deals. Well, where are you looking for great deals? In Florida. Where in Florida? In Tampa. So, well, can you help me out? I mean, what type of cash on cash return are you looking for? Are you using bank money? Are you paying cash? And a lot of these jokers will tell you, that's none of your business how I pay for it. Well, I'm trying to help you find a great deal. I'm going to negotiate a great deal for you. But for me to be able to do that, I need to know what your criteria is. Shireen says, Tyler, list all the expenses that should be in your underwriting. That includes any expense, Shireen. I'll keep it simple because it varies from deal to deal. Any expense that there is even remotely a chance that you will have to ever write a check for. Ever. Evelyn, forget about cap rate. I'll talk about that in a minute. Here's what you can change. How about that, Shireen? It's like you're reading my mind. There are two things, ladies and gentlemen, that you can change when you are in negotiations with a seller. And that is the price or the terms, period. Those of you that are coming down for Larry's boot camp here in 2 weeks are going to get a real clear understanding of this. You are going to walk out of there a negotiating machine. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. Two things you can mess with, price and terms. That's it. You cannot mess with expenses ever because the expenses are the expenses are the expenses. There's no changing them. The expenses of a property right there in red should never be altered or ignored during the evaluation or negotiating process ever. Please don't do that to yourself. You are stealing from yourself. So Shireen, here's a list of common expenses. Actual vacancy loss and projected vacancy loss. Here's what I mean by that. Right now, it's all rented up. It's all 100% rented, right? I see this all the time. We got no vacancy, 100% rented. What you don't realize is that just became fact 2 weeks ago. That they dropped the rent by 30% to fill the place so that you wouldn't see a bunch of empty units. Common trick in the market. Don't fall for it. That's why you not only want to see the leases, you want to see when the leases were signed and dated. And when you go to close, you're going to want to get an estoppel letter from the tenant where they sign off that this is the lease that they're agreeing to, that they already agreed to, and that they have X amount of deposit down and whatnot. That's important. Insurance costs, actuals. That means you got to pick up the phone and give them a call, the insurance companies. Frankie, I'll get your question in 1 second. Property taxes. How ironic. How do you figure out the property taxes on the new sales price? Here's the big challenge. So if you're in some areas, for example, in Florida, Pasco County has this cool little tool where you can put in the new sales price and it will tell you what the new taxes are. Apparently, that's a really difficult thing to figure out because I've never seen that anywhere else. Pinellas County, I would think, would be a lot more savvy. They would do that, but they don't have that feature. So if that's not the case, you can use the millage rate and do the calculations that way. But what I've found is that there's no better substitution than getting on the phone with the tax collector's office, giving them the new purchase price and asking them to do the calculation. Be prepared for the fact that they don't know how to do their own calculations. They're probably going to have to call you back. So just be prepared for that being a return phone call. And because they're government employees, sometimes it'll take them a while to call you back. So you may have to stay on top of them. Now, somebody just mentioned utilities. Cost tied to the vacancy loss for utilities. Now, if you are renting a place that the tenant pays the electric and the tenant pays water, sewer, and garbage, you're still going to have those costs come up. If you buy it vacant, for example, if you buy it vacant, you're probably going to clean it up, paint it, whatever. You're going to turn those utilities on. If you're anywhere in the South, you're going to leave the air conditioning on so it doesn't turn into a moldy mess. So you're going to incur those costs. And people think, oh, it's only $100. I'll leave it off. Well, you're taking money out of your own pocket. Okay. Because what you're really doing by leaving these expenses off is you're overpaying the seller intentionally. You're absolutely overpaying the seller because you're rewarding him. You're not taking those expenses out when you do your due diligence. Ladies and gentlemen, we make our money when we buy, not when we sell. We make it when we buy. So if we don't allow for those expenses when we buy, we are going to pay the seller a higher amount. You understand how that works? So that said, utilities should be tied to the vacancy loss. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say, for example, your vacancy loss is 10% is what you figure for a particular property. Let's say it's in a nice neighborhood and the landlord's got really tight records and you feel comfortable putting down 10%. If that's the case, then you should take what the annual electric bill would be. And in most cases, you can call your local utility company and ask them what the electric bill averages per month. They keep those records. You take that number, you multiply it by 12. If it's an average, you can just go off of that. But what I like to do is I find out what it was for the whole year, the last 12 months. I call it the trailing 12 months. I take that figure and I multiply it by whatever my vacancy loss percentage is. So if my vacancy loss is 10% and my power bills for the whole year are $100 a month, that's $1,200 for the year. That means I'm going to allow $120 for a power bill if the tenant is supposed to pay the electric. I will do that, ladies and gentlemen, even if it is rented. Because at some point, that tenant could move out. Lease or no lease, they can move out. So we want to make sure we've allowed for that money. Let's see here. Same goes with water, sewer, trash, all that. You're going to get hit with those bills. If you've got a multifamily property, chances are you're going to wind up paying water. I've got some buildings that I pay water on. Other buildings I don't pay water on. It depends on how the buildings are laid out. What I found is, and I've looked at both Tennessee and Florida, for me, I feel it's cost prohibitive to have separate meters put in. Down here in Florida, they want $985 per unit to branch off and put separate meters in. Well, I got a lot of doors. That's a lot of money. So for me, it doesn't make sense. In Tennessee, it's $760 per door, per meter to have them installed. I've got even more doors in Tennessee. I got a lot more property in Tennessee than I do in Florida. It's not worth the money. I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at, the property I'm at right now, my little fourplex, there's 4 units here. You get $985 times 4. That's almost $4,000. The water bill in itself is no more than $120 a month. So it's going to take me forever to get that money back. So why bother? And frankly, I build it into the rent. I know that it'll never be not paid, so I don't have to worry about a tenant coming and going, my water got shut off. So for me, I just take care of it. I build it into the rent. We leave it alone. Lawn service, you got to decide as a landlord whether you want to do the yard if you're not in the snow belt, or if you're going to have somebody else do it. Now, I believe in letting other people do it. What I really mean is the tenant versus having a service do it. Now, for me, especially, I'm a multifamily guy, which means if I have one tenant do the grass and he doesn't do the grass that month because he's lazy or got hurt or went out of town or whatever, the other tenants have to suffer because the grass isn't mowed, which lowers their quality of life. Because some people, it's a big deal. I can't stand it if the grass isn't mowed. It drives me crazy. I like everything neat and the way it should be. So that would bother me if I was a tenant. I tend to lean towards my tenants. I take very good care of them. I take very good care of the properties they live in because it creates a good experience for them. So I have very little vacancy loss because of that. So for me, I would not have the tenant do the yard under any circumstances, but that's me. That's my idea. If it's a single family house, you may decide that it makes sense for your tenant to do it or not, or they may decide they want to do it. But if you're in a deed restricted community with a single family house, you may want to rethink that, because if they sneeze once and don't get it cut quick enough, you're the one that's going to get the fine, not the tenant, because you own the house. Electric is a big one. If you are electric, falls under the same as before with the vacancy loss. But here's the thing. If you're buying multifamily property of any size, they'll probably be what they call a house account. Now, for me, a lot of my smaller buildings don't have a house account, but as now I'm into a lot bigger buildings, and when my bigger buildings, especially I've got properties that have several buildings on one property, and they're 2-story, I've got house accounts, which means the exterior lighting, laundry room electricity, all that stuff, the gas for the dryers, clothes dryers, and all of that is metered on a house account. So when you're doing due diligence on multifamily properties, especially to second floor for some reason, I don't know why that is, but when they're one floor, they seem to be metered individually. But a lot of times on the second story units, there's a lot of exterior lighting and therefore a house account that goes along with that. CapEx, or capital expenditures, this applies to houses or apartments, in my opinion. Obviously, the amount of capital expenditures are much greater on apartment buildings than they are on houses. Things that fall under CapEx are roofs, air conditioners, plumbing, electrical. These are things that you're going to have to replace in the future at some point. Understand that you're not getting around fixing a lot of this stuff. You're going to have to take care of it eventually. But, think of it like this. If your roof is not leaking, are you going to replace it? I guess the answer is it depends. If it's a single family house, chances are you can't afford to replace it because you're not making enough cash flow to cover a $7,000 to $10,000 roof. This is part of my problem with single family houses as rental properties is, roofs $7,000 to $10,000, at least in my market, for the average 12 to 1,500 square foot house. So if you factor that based on $100 and $200 a month in cash flow, it's going to take a long time to pay for that roof. But if you've got a triplex, fourplex, or however plex, a roof can get done a lot easier. Now, I have a property up in Memphis that the roof is at the end of its life, but I'm not going to replace it just yet. It hasn't started to leak, and it's going to be an expensive roof. I'm going to probably spend $50,000 on that roof. It's a big building, lots of doors. So what I did, though, is I've been building up a capital expenditures account. So probably next year we'll go ahead and do that roof, but I'm not going to have to borrow any money to do it. I'm going to use my capital expenditures account to cover that. A little kind of a sideline there, guys, with capital expenditures. What I have done is I've invested it into my capital expenditures money into accounts that are kind of like annuities that actually pay me a pretty healthy return while the money sits there doing nothing. And then I can borrow against that money at any time I want. I pay a very small amount of interest to borrow against that money, but the rest of the money keeps making money. I've got a podcast episode coming up. I think it's next week's episode where I talk to this guy. Frankie, as far as a certain percentage for CapEx, it varies depending on the asset and the condition, but I would say at least 2 to 5% on a larger building. And I would go as much as 10%. I'm talking about of income, 10% minimum on a smaller building of income. Well, Shireen, if you like this so much, if you were still down here in Florida, I just did this at the TB RIA meeting 2 nights ago. See, but you had to run off to Atlanta. No, I don't know who Nelson Nash is. Cleaning and maintenance. Guys, you can't get around this. If you're not cleaning and maintaining your property, then you're probably a slumlord. Maybe, maybe not, but maybe. I have a cleaning company comes by and cleans the common areas of all of my buildings in Tennessee. Nobody does that in Tennessee. See, they let furniture like stack up on the front porch, and people live like pigs if you let them. So what I do is have a cleaning company come through and clean the common areas. It provides a better quality of life for the tenants. It makes the tenants happy. Nobody else does it in town. Not only do I not have vacancy in any of my units in Memphis, but I actually have a waiting list of people to get in, which is kind of cool. I'm looking for more buildings right now because I've got capital again. I got no buildings to put it in. Because I've created that situation. I really can't take much credit for it. It's my team. My team is awesome up there in Tennessee. Guys, the bottom line is at the bottom of the slide. You should only pay based on what the property does do, not based on what it will do. Do not reward the sellers for doing a lousy job. I've said that time and time again, so much so I made it my own quote. Do not reward the seller for doing a lousy job of managing an asset. The best way to find opportunity, guys, is to focus on talking to and finding cranky tenants. Recently, a lot of you know I just bought a credit repair franchise that we've opened up. It's another additional stream of income, but it also helps us qualify buyers. The third benefit there is I find that a lot of people, the large majority of people that have terrible credit, are renters. So while we're on the phone with them, my team asks them about the experience of where they're living. How do you like where you're living? And we are starting to keep records. I hate it. It's a train wreck. Oh, really? Huh. And now we're doing this around the country because you're going to start seeing some of our marketing roll out where we're helping people fix their credit around the country. My team is. I'm not doing much of it, but my team is. This is a way for us to generate leads. Oh, you don't like where you live? Why don't you like where you live? Well, the heat's always out and the landlord doesn't plow the sidewalk or shovel the sidewalk, and the water has been out for 3 days and the roof's leaking. Really? Huh. It's interesting. Now I already know where they live. So all we got to do is figure out who owns the property, reach out to the owner and say, have you ever thought about getting involved in real estate investing? And they're going to go, hell no. I hate my tenants. They suck. They're mean. They trash my place. If I could find somebody dumb enough to buy this place, I'd sell it to them. I'm dumb enough. Let's see if we can do a deal. My friend Larry Harbolt says, don't join a seller in the quicksand. For those of you that find subject twos all sexy, I know they sound cool, and they are cool to some degree. But don't jump in the quicksand with the seller. In other words, do your math. Subject to makes sense if you've got a good exit strategy that makes sense on the other end. But don't buy a property that's over leveraged just to have a deal. That doesn't make sense. Make sure there's a way for you to get paid and get the hell out unscathed. So keep that in mind. Little shameless plug for his show, The Real Deal Real Estate Show with Larry Harbolt. If you haven't heard his podcast, it rocks. Why does it rock? Because I'm the producer. That's why it rocks. The hell with him. He's just the talent. I'm the producer. Just kidding. Now, Larry's a great guy. His show is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, you name it. It's all over the place. So get on board with that and watch that. Actually, he just released an episode about Subject to. Great little episode about Subject to. I got 2 more podcasts launching soon. One of them is going to blow your mind. I'm not even going to tell you about it yet. It's something that Larry and I are doing together as co-hosts. This one's going to be awesome. This is a podcast that unlike anything you've ever heard, ever. We are going for the top of the charts with this one. And the second one, we just launched. We're just waiting for our branding to come out, and our trademark will be about local real estate in the Tampa Bay market. A podcast for that. Lastly, guys, and I'm going to do this over a couple parts because this presentation went on for an hour and a half. I haven't announced the name of the other podcast, Paul. Not yet. I'm waiting for my copyright to come in, my trademark rather, and then I'll announce it because it's really good. To successfully negotiate, you've got to understand the seller's pricing strategy. Don't be afraid to ask, how did we, and it's all about how you say it. Hey, Mr. Seller, you're priced at $249.9. Did you have an appraisal done or something, or do you know a real estate agent, or how did you come up with that price? Now, all in the way you say it depends on the answer you're going to get, or if you get an answer at all, or a punch in the face. You need to understand what the seller plans to do with the proceeds of the sale. Those of you that are in the kingdom and the mentoring group, you know this better than anybody. I say this all the time. You've got to figure out what the seller's going to do with the proceeds. You got to figure this out because that's going to help you write your deals. Always be direct with the seller or the decision maker. And I know that a lot of you, even though I tell you otherwise, you continue to go look at properties that have realtors involved. And you're trying to work a deal with a realtor in a hot market. That doesn't make sense. Here's why. Realtors are paid based on commission, which means the more the house sells for, the more they get paid. They want it quick and dirty and painless. They don't want the seller to be mad at them or anybody to be mad at them. They just want the deal done. Most properties that hit the market wind up in some sort of an auction. So don't get caught up in this, guys. Don't get caught up in this auction crap. I saw a post on Facebook this morning. Someone was saying that lost out on a deal because somebody beat you out with a higher bid. Good, because they didn't win, guys. You did. Understand that. They didn't win. You did. You got to be focusing on what's not for sale. Problems, not properties. You got to, if you absolutely insist on working through an agent, that's fine, but make sure that the agent brings you along to present the offer. Do not give the agent the offer because they're going to look at it. Their brain is going to go right to the price and go, the seller won't take that. Or they'll look at the comments and go, oh, it's a seller financing. That's illegal. You can't do that. It's illegal. Forget that. You write out the offer. You make a copy of it. On the copy, you take a big black magic marker. You cross off the price and the terms. Hand it to them. Here. And the only thing that you're going to show, besides all the other nondescript information on the contract, is that this offer is contingent on the buyer being able to present this to the seller in the presence of the listing agent and buyer's agent if you have one. Guys, the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics clearly states that a listing agent cannot prevent you from presenting an offer to the seller directly, provided they are present. They can't stop you. And if they do, you can file a complaint with the National Association of Realtors. That will not work well for the agent, that I assure you. Show a deal breakdown based on the asking price. This is something I do on a regular basis that works very well with negotiating. People think I'm crazy. What, you're lifting the curtain? You're showing them that if there's a profit, what, have you lost your mind? Guys, people aren't as dumb as you think they are. When they see that you're going to be a landlord, they know you're not going to buy at a loss. So you don't have to hide behind this veil of secrecy that, oh my goodness, I'm going to make a profit. No, of course you're going to make a profit. You wouldn't be doing this. You're not a moron. So what I do is I show my deal breakdown. Hey, Mr. Seller, based on the $435,000 you want for this fourplex that rents for $500 a door, I'm going to lose $1,800 a month. So I'm trying to figure out in my brain why I should buy this and lose $1,800 a month. I'm not seeing that. Can you help me understand? Then they're going to start talking about, well, I didn't figure property management. Oh, so who managed it? So do you work for free then? Oh, well, no. Okay, well, I got to figure that. Well, I didn't put insurance in there either. Oh, no insurance? They start to get the point as you go line by line. That's why you bring this up. You start going through this line by line with them, they're going to see right away that, number one, you're not an idiot. But number two, that you're taking the time to make sure that you're protecting yourself and them because they don't know it yet, but they're going to give you terms. And this is going to help you a lot when you get ready to talk about the terms. Notice, we've talked about the opportunity, we've built rapport, and then somewhere towards the end of the conversation, we're talking about terms. Guys, don't pick up the phone and call them and go, hi, this is Jimmy. Will you seller finance it for me? Will you take payments? Will you take terms? You haven't built a relationship yet. The answer is always going to be no. Almost always. It's like, don't call title companies and say, will you double close? That's dumb. Don't do that. Because the title companies, 9 out of 10 are going to say, no, we're not going to double close. Because that's a bad word in the title world. So don't do that and you won't have that problem. Always be face to face when you're negotiating, guys. Negotiating over the cell phone, the iPhone, The Android, the Google, the Windows, whatever, doesn't make sense. Don't do it. You can't build rapport over a cell phone. What you can do is be misunderstood and piss somebody off. Or if you're young, show your age to the older guy who you're trying to earn his respect. And if you're blowing up his phone, not going to work. You got to be face to face. In today's world, it's really, there's no excuse to not be face to face unless the person you're dealing with is elderly and out of town. If they're elderly and in town, you need to get on the bus, get on your bike, ride your skateboard, drive your car, hitchhike, whatever you got to do to go sit down with the seller on their territory or in neutral territory. You want to give them the false sense of security that they are in charge. If they think that they are in charge, you will be in great shape. Just remember, you can be in charge. You just don't have to let the whole world know that you're in charge. This day and age, you got Skype, you got Zoom, you've got 50 other means of communicating via email or via video, live video, like we are right now. You guys are around the country. I'm sitting here in sunny Florida, a pair of shorts, getting ready to go out and water the plants after this. We can have these meetings face to face. So there's no reason to not be face to face. That's very, very important. And if you absolutely cannot be face to face, then at least be on the telephone with them, having a conversation with real words, something that goes longer than 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. That's very important. So guys, that's all what I got for you for today. Hope you found that valuable. And do you guys have any questions at this point? Let's see here. I see Evelyn this morning. There's Dario. Dario, you're in New York City, aren't you, brother? All right, let me unmute you real quick. Where are you at in New York?
Howard Beach.
Isn't that where the rich folk live?
Supposedly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I've seen those movies. I've never been to Howard Beach, but I just keep seeing it as like a vacation place on the movies.
It's weird because you'll have a regular house right next to a mansion, so nothing makes sense around here.
Yep. That's where Frankie's from. Yeah. Frankie Costanza, he's on here somewhere on this chat. He's from Howard Beach. I won't hold it against him. Paul's asking, all right, I'm going to go ahead and mute you here. Paul's asking, when you do your podcast, I've been listening to all of them, waiting for episode 61. My podcast launch every morning at 6 a.m. And if they're not out at 6 a.m., I will strangle my marketing team because they should be. Now you got me freaked out. I'm going to have to go look. Let's see here. Yep. 61 is out. Flip Talk with Don Costa. Those of you that are in the kingdom, you probably have heard of Don. He's the guy that's the rehabber out of California. I had him on the show. Bert and Jenny, how are you? Sorry for your loss. Get on the phone with you probably a little bit later today. So does anybody have any questions at this point? It's about 9:48. We got about 12 minutes or so before I got to go do other things. There's a new program for streaming. I'll send you the name later. Okay, that's cool. If I got to figure out one more thing to stream to, I'm going to freak out. I got this Wirecast system that streams to YouTube, all my Facebook groups, my Facebook pages, my profile, and Periscope all at the same time. But it takes like a PhD to run it. I got to get a guy in here in the morning just to run the damn thing. I came out here early this morning and I still didn't get it working. But as soon as I get done, it'll take me 5 minutes and I'll have it working great. Because that's how it works. What can you do? Anybody else before we log in or log off? Steven, I know you got something. Steven from Atlanta. You guys are all muted, so if you want to be unmuted, just raise your hand and I'll get you unmuted. Oop, I see Lance. There we go. Hey, Lance. Hold on, brother.
Hey, good morning, sir.
How you doing?
Hey, real good. Just grinding it out today. Had a couple questions that I wanted to hash out to try to understand how to calm somebody's fears when talking about seller financing with them. The one question I got from this lady I was talking to, she said, I'm not comfortable selling my house on a note. If something happens, like a bus hits you tomorrow or the next week, what is the security instrument that ensures that I actually get my money? Because I don't want the damn house. Because I had mentioned, well, if you're the first lien holder, then you just get the house back. Probably the wrong answer, but I'm looking for how that would work.
We'll call her Mary. Mary, I understand your concern 100%. And in the past, what I've done that has made everybody so far very comfortable is that let's say that we're talking about a $150,000 mortgage. What I will do is I will go ahead and take a $200,000 life insurance policy. I will cover the cost of the life insurance policy, and I will make you the beneficiary. Would you find that acceptable?
Aha.
So you not only get your 150 grand back, you'll also get $50,000 so you can mourn me.
Awesome. Second question, if we have time.
Yeah, man.
She asked, we talk a lot about the seller is not the bank. They are taking payments for their equity. She could not understand or get past how if she's holding a note, just like a mortgage company does, how she's not the bank. And I could not figure out the right answer for that.
Okay, the best analogy is this. When the bank is involved, the bank writes a check or does a wire transfer to you, and you give that money to a third party. In this case, she's not giving you any money. She is loaning you equity.
Okay. Third party. So the third party is the big difference.
Yes.
And there's a wire transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just writing this down. Great answers. Last question, or second to last question. When this was a private money conversation more than anything, but they wanted to know how I'm able to do what I'm doing without, the first question they asked is, oh, that's going to take a lot of money if you're going to buy and hold. I said, well, not necessarily. Let me explain to you how it actually works. And that's where these first two questions came from. So we got around to the private money conversation, and they are somewhere in their 70s, and they feel as if they may not be here very much longer. And when we talked about the percentage they could get back, they said, well, what if I want my money faster? We talked about padding a note for a seller, but can you pad a note for a private money?
Of course. It's the same thing, essentially.
And it's all about what the deal can afford at that point.
What you should care about if it's a buy and hold deal is what does the money cost you per month?
Okay.
In other words, I would sign $1 million note if I only got to make $200 a month payments. I would also buy a house for $1 million if I only had to make $200 payments. Same.
Yep. And the one question she kept asking about was, so if I sell you this house on a note, do I give you the title or do I keep it and then you have the deed registered in your name, or how does that all break down at the closing table per se?
Well, because I'm concerned, I want to make sure that I protect you as the former owner of the house from all liability. Generally, what we recommend and what my attorney recommended to me is that we go ahead and transfer the deed to the property over to my company. We will in turn give you a promissory note and a mortgage, and the mortgage is a security instrument that's recorded against the deed. That gives you equitable interest essentially in the property. And of course, as we talked about, we would go ahead and give you that life insurance policy to guarantee that note in the event of my passing.
Okay.
Now, we can structure it to where the deed remains in your name. However, you would have to understand that you would be 100% liable for anything that happened on the property during the time the deed was in your name. And I would not want to expose you to any liability like that without you being fully aware of it. But if you're uncomfortable transferring the deed, we could do that. Now, I'm obviously not going to provide the life insurance policy if the deed's not in my name. You would get X, and then I would make it less attractive if she wants to keep the deed in her name. In other words, that to me is a counteroffer. Oh, you don't want to transfer the deed. I understand that. In order to give you what we talked about you getting, which would solve your problem, I would have to have the deed in my name. Now, we could work out another type of scenario, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you, let's say it's $150,000 for the property, because I have to structure things differently, and that's going to cost additional money, and that will cost a loss of revenue. And you're also going to have to be in a position to assume liability. I'm trying to remove liability from you, not put it on you.
That's the key. Okay. Good deal. I have one more question, unless somebody else needs to go. So you can ask. The question of lien positions came up, and not surely I understand how a lien position works and why they would want to be either first, second, or as far as a private money is concerned. If that's not even, so seems like there's two ways you can structure a private money deal. One is they just get a percentage on their money back, or if you're talking about lien positions, if I understand this right, they are actually a partner with you in this equity deal.
No.
If they're on a lien. So I don't understand apparently how liens work.
If they are a partner, now I'm not an attorney, I'm not giving legal advice, but if they are a partner in the deal, they get equity. That's the way my attorney explains it to me.
Okay.
So in other words, if you and I do a deal and I'm bringing the money and you have the time and the experience, I'm going to be co-owner of that property with you. I'll fund the deal 100%. You don't have to make me any payments right now. And if we're going to sell it in 5 years, that's fine. But we're going to be co-owners. And there's a million different ways we can structure that. We can do that in an LLC, to where you're in the LLC and I'm in the LLC. We could each have our own LLCs. And those LLCs jointly own a third LLC that owns the entity. There's all kinds of different structures. When it comes down to that, that's where I would get with Sean.
Okay.
And explain the individual deal to Sean and have him come up with a structure that makes sense for that deal. There's no boilerplate cookie cutter way of breaking that out. But we do that because sometimes I'll bring capital into other people's deals. We're doing that right now at a property in Dallas where we're funding. I've got some private money, about $2 million that we're funding as acquisition. What we've done is we came in, we formed an LLC. It's a group of doctors and I formed an LLC, and we're coming in as partners on this deal because the other people don't have a lot of experience, but they've went ahead and hired some experts in the market to work with them. So we came in as partners on the deal. They're going to get the cash flow piece of it, a large piece of the cash flow. We're going to take the equity and the depreciation off of it. So everybody wins.
Awesome. All right. That answers my question, man. Thank you so much.
Joe, did you have a question? Thought I saw a hand up. You good, brother?
I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you.
How you doing, Tyler?
Good.
I'll just be short and sweet since we're pushing the time. I just did a walkthrough yesterday on a property that fits our description, and my confidence has grown from start to finish from a couple months ago when my partner's on vacation and I couldn't put a deal under contract. I've already knocked that out, did that. So now I'm at a point where we can't purchase it outright. The guy has a mortgage of $96,000. And so from the sounds of it, I was just telling them about a potential, not a subject to deal. And he was like really open to it. I didn't elaborate because I didn't want to botch any information that I didn't know personally.
Right.
So I'm just trying to inquire about the next steps to do the due diligence to make sure it'll work for us. His payments are around like $515 a month. And the area that it's in, out of speculation, I know 3-bedroom, 1 bath, 1,500 square feet could go for at least $750, $800. So I'm just like, I'm inquiring on the next steps of any videos to check out or what other things I should do the research on to make sure this is a potential subject to.
Is there any potential for it to be flipped? I mean, is it rented now?
He still stays there. They want to move. to somewhere down south in Michigan or in another state.
Okay. Is there any opportunity to flip it or wholesale it? The reason I ask is at $515 a month in debt, you're not going to be able to rent it and make money if it's only going to rent for $750 to $800. The numbers are off.
Okay. Because of like holding costs and things like that, correct?
Correct. But that doesn't mean that it's completely out of the woods, because if those payments only come into play for a short period of time, let's say the house needs a lot of work, and although they're underwater based on the condition it's in today, if you renovated it and let's say it's now worth $200,000, it might be worth your while to eat those payments for 6 months as a cost of doing business and get the renovation done and then flip it.
Okay.
So what we need to figure out is what is his mortgage balance, because we're going to need to pay that off.
I have that.
If we sell it. Okay. So what is that?
It's
Ballpark.
It's like 96,000 and some change.
And what would the house be worth on its best day?
It was 96. On his best day, I checked out Zillow and Redfin. I didn't run comps yet, but it was like 107 right now as is. But it does need updates to the property.
Okay. From my opinion, and I'd be interested to see what Gabriel may think of. He's got a lot of experience in this regard as well. But my opinion, there's nothing there to work with. He's just way over leveraged.
Okay.
Now, if ARV was in the, I don't know, 175, 200 range, something like that, and it only needed 10, 20 grand, like a light cosmetic rehab, maybe. But it doesn't sound like there's a lot of opportunity there, a lot of meat in the bone, not enough room for people to make money, because you got to get paid. The contractors have got to get paid. The money people got to get paid. Everybody's got to get paid. And you got to have some meat to work with there. What I don't like about it is it's a 3-1. What I could like about it is if there's a feasibility to add a second bath, that could make a bump in value, but probably not a huge one. $5,000, maybe 10 grand, depends on the market.
Yeah, it could be one downstairs. The thing about it is it'll take away from the space downstairs, because all the bedrooms, just one bedroom, master bedroom on the main floor, and 2 bedrooms upstairs, and then that's it. It's just 2 bedrooms, but there's no space for a bathroom to go up there.
So in that case, what I would look at first of all is just a quick way to use that hurdle rate I was talking about. If I know that the property will rent for $750, let's say. Well, we actually just did that math. That means for me as a hold property, I need to be in it for 50 grand. And we've got almost twice that much in debt. So realistically, I would pass right there. That's the beauty of a quick test. I would say no go and just move on to the next opportunity. The other way you could look at that is you go 96,000 as what the payoff is, right?
Right.
Times 1.5% means that property needs to rent for $1,440. If you wrote a check and paid off that mortgage right now, that property needs to generate $1,440 gross rent. And if we're at $750, $800, we're a long ways away. And that's before we fix it up.
And you always multiply it by 1.5% with the asking price, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, I got people that come to my events locally and they'll scream out, I do 1%. And how many rentals do you have that actually cash flow? And then they get all quiet. I live off my cash flow. That's why I'm doing it. I don't really think it's cool to be a landlord. I think it kind of sucks, actually. It's why I pay other people to do it.
Right.
But, I'm in this to win. That's my thing. So
I agree. Yeah, that works great. I just didn't want to, like I said, it's my first go around with something like this. I knew it qualified for it, but I didn't want to waste any time or do something not right. So I was like, hey, I might as well inquire.
I mean, you could always lease option it to somebody if you found somebody that was interested, a tenant buyer, but understand they're not going to be able to, probably not going to be able to refi out of it at some point. They're not going to be able to exercise their option. So, there's just not enough meat there. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. So don't even waste time with it. I would now we do have a realtor. This is my other question, and I'm done. But I do have a realtor that averages about 45 deals a year that we just connected with 2 months ago. We sent them a referral already that's going to be listed in March. Do you suggest that I refer him to the realtor just so it could be a complimentary service of our business? Like, okay, we can't help you directly, but indirectly, we have someone to be able to take care of you and still get that referral in a month or two.
Yeah, what I would do is it's a prime candidate probably for a short sale. So I would refer it to the agent for a short sale. And even if the agent can't handle it, let's say the agent doesn't want to do short sales, that agent could refer it to another agent, and then that agent would get a 25% of the guy that did the short sale or girl that did the short sales referral fee or commission. So it would be money for them no matter what, even if they did nothing. Like if you referred it to me, well, I don't necessarily do short sales, but I would find somebody in Michigan that does short sales, and then I would get a piece of that commission, for example. So I would find an agent up there that's going to benefit you by you giving them the information with no expectations of anything in return, right? I mean, you could give it to me and I make 25%, but that doesn't help you. I'm already helping you. Find an agent up in your area that will be of benefit to you, and then that's squared away. Give them the referral. They may or may not do short sales. Say, well, could you refer it to somebody? And then you could make the referral fee. Sometimes you got to explain that to them. It's like, here's another way for you to make money that you probably didn't think about. The benefit there is you could say to them, hey, Jimmy, the agent, if you run across the property that's just a mess, or they've got some serious problems and listing it wouldn't be ideal, let me know. Maybe I could help out the situation, and I could work in a way for you to get paid on the deal as well.
Okay.
That way you give them a lead, they give you a lead, and they get paid both ways.
Right.
Because us dirty agents, that's all we think about. We got to get paid. I'm not going to talk to anybody unless I'm getting paid.
Same here, man. I'm just not an agent yet. I'll be getting my license in the next 35, 45 days.
That's cool. Well, when you get your license, let me know. I'll put you in my referral bank, and you can start making some money that way.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
right. Tyler.
No problem. A couple questions in the chat real quick. Frankie asked, do I physically give the sellers a calculator to do the math? Yeah, absolutely. Because here's the thing. Jimmy Napier said it best. Your math will never be correct in the eyes of a seller. The seller's math is always correct. So I give them a calculator if they don't have their own, because I've even had them say, what's wrong with this calculator? Well, dude, use any calculator. I don't care. Today, most cell phones have a calculator. Encourage them to use their own calculator and to do the math. And the way I do it is, hey, can you double check my math? Would you mind? And then I'll turn that legal pad around and go, here you go. And let them do the math. Because if it's their math, it's correct. If it's your math, it's subject to scrutiny. Let's see here. Yeah, Paul, if you've registered about this being recorded, if you've registered to be here, in other words, if you are not a member of the kingdom and you've registered to be here, since you're a member of the kingdom, go ahead and register. That will give you access to the back end of my website. And I've got all the recordings listed there where you can watch all the previous episodes of this. So if any of you for some reason got here without registering, make sure that you register, and then you can get access to all the previous episodes. Let's see here. All right, Frankie got you covered, and we have Trey in Dallas. You there, Trey? I got you unmuted. Hello, hello.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Got no audio. Yeah, I got you unmuted too. It must be on your end.
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, I can hear you a little bit.
Oh,
If you can just turn up the volume, we'll be all set.
all right. So, what about now? Can you hear me right? Okay. So I'm looking for a multifamily to live in. And I'm coming across a lot of duplexes, not a lot of triplexes that I can get So I'm trying to figure out my math. I'm using the formulas that you gave and, factoring in taxes and insurance. But with a duplex, I'm coming up short. So I'm trying to figure out whether I should be, especially since I'm going to be living in it for like a year, should I be going just off the one side renting, or should I factor it in as if both sides are renting, even though I'm living in one?
If it's going to eventually be an investment property, you always do all your math based on it being an investment property, period. So the fact that you're paying rent, that's a choice that you make. It should have nothing to do with how you underwrite the deal. Okay. So if market rent is $600 a side, it's $600 a side. The fact that you're willing to pay $750 doesn't matter, because you pay $900 now, and if I could get it for $600, I'd be saving. Don't even go there. If market rent's $600 a side, it's $600 a side. So in that case, we know it's $1,200 divided by 1.5%. I need to be in it for $80,000 or less.
Is that including repairs?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Because if you go back to, I think it was the week before's episode where I had the deal analyzer up, and you start plugging in those repairs that a lot of people tend to ignore, like, oh, I'll deal with the roof later. Go ahead and throw $7,000 onto anything under $100,000 and see what it does to your numbers. It's like, wow, I'm losing a lot of money.
Okay.
That's why I don't raise capital for properties generally under $1 million in most cases, because if I have to bring more than one investor in on a deal, the legal fees alone can be as much as $20,000. So I'm always looking for deals over $1 million for that very reason. Just because that one chunk of expense skews the whole deal if it's a small number. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, guys, let's see here. All right, guys. Well, we're running a little over tonight, or this morning rather. See, my coffee hasn't kicked in yet. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there. I'm just going to ask Nicole's question is, does Section 8 apply to the 1.5 rule? I still go off of market rent. Here's the reason, Nicole, and I'm not saying this to be political in any shape, way, or form. We have no control over what the government does. The government does what the government does, and we have no control. And I don't care who's in office. It could be Trump, Hillary, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, don't matter. The Section 8 is a government-funded program. I do not have much faith in the government, and that comes from the fact that I served the government for 5 years, and I worked for those fools for 5 more. So I got 10 years experience that tells me I don't put a whole lot of stock in a government-based program. Section 8 rents are generally higher rents than what the market allows for. So I don't believe in doing my math based on Section 8 rent. That's me. I'm conservative. That said, I will use market rent. And here's a good example. 2, 3, 4 of my buildings in Tennessee, I've got veterans in there. And the VA, the Veterans Administration, in the city of Memphis and Shelby County has a program to where I get to rent the rooms, not necessarily the apartment. So normally those apartments would rent for $425 a piece for the whole apartment, and they're 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And I get $400 per bedroom. I get $800. So if I would have used $800 as a metric, and I knew this going in, but if I would have used that when I was going to purchase, how likely do you think it is that I would have overpaid for the buildings? Now I'm hearing that veterans program may not last forever because of some funding issues and everybody's fighting everybody in Washington and whatnot. So if that's the case, and I would have hedged my bets on $800 a month coming in, I'd be in deep doo-doo. But instead, I've been living like a fat cat because I built everything based on $425. I know I can get $425. Now I've made so much money off of those buildings that I've taken care of all of the capital expenditures that I had budgeted for. And that means I have enough cash left over. I can buy 2 more buildings with the extra money. So for me, I'm thinking home run. But if you're using Section 8 or government funded inflated rent rates as a means to buy, you're never going to have that happen. it's going to eat you up every single time. So those programs are great. And I'm glad they're out there because I believe there's a lot of people that need those programs. But I believe that they won't last. They don't last forever. And a lot of times, like down here in Florida, Shireen, you probably know this, in St. Pete, they'll shut off the housing, or they'll claim there's a waiting list. And I know that we've gone 2 years where nobody else can get on the program, where they just stop doing it. So if you've bought your properties based on getting money out of that program and then they shut down the program, you got a problem. So that's that. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. I thank you for coming out. If you know somebody that would benefit from coming out and joining this event, it is going to hopefully always be free of charge unless somebody figures out a way to charge me to do this, then I'm going to pass on the savings to you. But otherwise, we will keep this free as a mentorship opportunity. If you guys are looking for more steady mentorship on a regular basis, talk to me about the Kingdom. It is absolutely incredible. If you go to cashflowguys.com/mentor, that is a way in to the Kingdom. And we've got a plan now where I think they're giving 10 days for free. You can come in and check it out for 10 days. Cashflowguys.com. I just put it in the chat /mentor. Those of you that have not registered for Larry's 4-day boot camp, my friend Larry Harbolt's seller financing boot camp, shame on you. Those of you that have, I look forward to seeing you coming down here to Florida if you're from out of state. We've got some cool stuff planned for those of you that are coming. You come out of that boot camp and you can't get a deal, I got nothing for you, because Larry is going to he's going to throw it all at you. So prepared for a fire hose coming. If you guys are interested in checking out more about that, I will put the link for that in the chat. It's cashflowguys.com/no banks. Cashflowguys.com/no banks. I will tell you about Larry's boot camp. And then cashflowguys.com/mentor is how you can find out more about the Kingdom if you're interested in that, learning a little more. So everybody have a great Friday, and we will see you next Friday. Thanks bunch.